Hey folks, this is Kalani. There have been a few additional updates to the PTR recently which give us more of an idea where certain data mined rewards come from, including a few mounts and some transmog stuff, but that's not all that's new. The two allied races which are coming with patch 8.15, the Zandalari Trolls and the Kul'Tiran Humans, are still being worked on and getting their finishing touches slapped on to make sure they're ready for whenever 8.15 actually launches, and we have our first glimpse of Warlords of Draenor Timewalking as well. Hopefully it's been long enough for you to forget what the Warlords dungeons were like, so you can experience them all over again, and maybe not immediately hate them the first time Timewalking comes around. So there's quite a few things on today's list, let's jump right in. You might remember a cool Alliance Wolf mount which had us all super confused because it wasn't another horse added to the Alliance's obviously overpopulated stables. Well, now we know how you can get your hands on that mount. But before you get super worried about the lack of horses whenever a new mount is introduced, you should know that there is in fact a horse mount to go alongside the wolf. So we have the Ironclad Frostclaw, a white wolf in the gold, silver and blue Alliance armor, which goes together a little too well. That's a pretty cool looking mount. But then we also have the Blood Flank Charger, a dark horse sporting some awesome red and silver Horde themed armor, which has quite a few spikes tacked on for good measure. You see, the Horde emblem and the typical colours just aren't enough. For this truly to be recognisable as Horde armour, there has to be at least 12 or so spikes. By my counting, they didn't quite meet the requirements here, but it's a nice little swapsy deal going on where the factions trade their most typical, and probably overused at this point, mounts with a little bit of flair thrown in. How you acquire these mounts is quite fitting as well. You have to complete the achievement 2 sides to every tale. This achievement requires you to complete the war campaign for both Horde and Alliance on the same account. So I think these mounts should be named the Faction Traitor mounts, because you can't be loyal to either side and still obtain them for the Horde and all that good stuff. So you would need to level up both a Horde and Alliance character and take them all the way through the war campaign for their respective faction. That's definitely quite a time sink if you don't already play both factions, but for anyone who has been following the story on both sides, this is a nice little reward for all your extra effort. I'm not sure these mounts are all that special to really entice a lot of players to put in that extra time, but for anyone who was looking for an excuse to level up on the opposite faction, to maybe check out the story for themselves, there's also a mount in it for you now as well, after patch 8.1.5 goes live. If you've been keeping up to date with the progress of our next allied races, the Zandalari Trolls and the Kul'Tiran Humans, you might have noticed a distinct lack of personality thus far. Their jokes, dances, emotes and all that stuff wasn't really available when they first popped onto the PTR. Heck, we couldn't even fly with those races. But the dances for both races were just pushed to the PTR server, so at least we can have a look at how these new kids on the block strut their stuff. The Zandalari males and females both have pretty funky dances. I'm not too sure what the male dance is modelled after, but it's not altogether too exciting. The loop also seems quite short, so these dances might not be the finished versions, or the dev team might not have had that much inspiration for these dances in particular. The female Zandalari dance is modelled after the Gwara Gwara, apparently, hope I said that right, though other people have been calling it the stanky leg. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not an expert on this kind of thing, so I apologise if that's an inappropriate name, but either way, the influence is pretty clear. The female dance also has a relatively short loop, which is a little disappointing, but again, they might not be finished yet. Over on the Alliance side, the Kul'Tiran male is pretty pleased with himself while dancing. This one is modelled after the Thick Man video, from what I read on Wowhead, and after watching the video I can see why they think that. The Kul'Tiran is just a fairly beefy man having a good time, not caring what anyone thinks about his cool little dance moves. The female Kul'Tirans are a little fancier, following a little ballet routine for their dance emote. I say little because once again it has quite a short loop. You'll see the same routine over and over again fairly quickly. Hopefully they have a few extra bits and pieces to add into some of these dances, otherwise they might be some of the least exciting dances we've seen in a long time. Maybe they just don't want to use the same kind of resources on an allied race and its emotes as they used to use on an actual race, though at this point I think the allied race system might be hurting new races more than it's helping if that's the case. The other big piece of news on the PTR right now is Warlords of Draenor Timewalking. Patch 8.1.5 brings yet another expansion under the wing of the Timewalking system, so we can go back and work our way through various dungeons that we haven't seen in over 2 years. I think they'll probably stop here for now, and we'll leave Legion untouched until we get another expansion. Legion content is probably way too fresh in our minds to consider throwing into the Timewalking rotation just yet, but with the Warlords of Draenor Timewalking, we'll have access to 6 of the 8 dungeons that were available back in the day. We'll have the Everbloom, Blood Maul Slag Mines, Iron Docks, Orkindoon, Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, and Skyreach. That leaves out the Grimrail Depot and Upper Blackrock Spire, which is a bit of a shame. The Grimrail Depot was a pretty cool dungeon, but I can see why they wouldn't want to just throw people into it if they haven't seen it before. It was a little bit of a weird one, which also made it kind of difficult, but the others are going to be available for us to romp through, collect a few more badges, and maybe grab a couple easy levels on some ults. We haven't heard anything about a Timewalking raid, so we probably won't have access to any Timewalking raids when this first goes live for Warlords of Draenor, but that might be added on later down the line. I imagine the raid they would bring back would either be the Blackrock Foundry or the Hellfire Citadel raid maybe, but it's not like they have many choices when it comes to Warlords of Draenor raids anyway. The vendors for the Warlords Timewalking event will be located in Ashran for both factions, so Warspear for the Horde and Storm Shield for the Alliance. The Horde vendor is on the left of the inn and is fairly easy to find. I'll provide you with a little map to make sure you can't get lost. The Alliance vendor can be found right next to the inn in Storm Shield. Once again, I'll give you a little map to show you exactly where. Both of these vendors sell the exact same goodies as you might expect from a Timewalking vendor, including 2 mounts, 2 toys, commendations for most Warlords of Draenor factions, a whole bunch of time-warped pieces of gear, including quite a few weapons, and the usual heirloom upgrade tokens. The 2 mounts are the Beast Lord's Iron Tusk and the Beast Lord's War Wolf. Right now the Wolf is marked as Horde only, and the Iron Tusk is marked as Alliance only, but they're both on both vendors. So we might have faction-specific mounts again, or they might just need to update a few things on the PTR to allow both factions to have both mounts. I feel like both mounts would be super cool, but I also wouldn't put it past Blizzard to just tack on that annoying faction-specific requirement for a few more mounts. I feel like older expansion models or mounts shouldn't have such strict limitations. That's kind of boring at the end of the day, but we'll see what happens when this eventually goes live. The 2 toys are the Apex Focusing Shard, which doesn't seem to work right now, but from the description it sounds like it's going to be another light toy, which puts a beam of light in front of you, something similar to that, and the Banner of the Burning Blade is another banner toy. This one might sound a little familiar if you played during Warlords of Draenor, and that's because there's another toy called the Burning Blade which does more or less the same thing. It gives you a Burning Blade weapon and the Burning Blade banner. This new toy doesn't give you the weapon, but the banner is quite a bit larger, so it's kind of the same thing, but just a little different at the same time, and it comes from Timewalking instead. That does seem a little lazy in my eyes though. The rest of the vendor stuff is fairly typical of Timewalking. Easy rep tokens for most factions, heirloom upgrades, and an assortment of weapons and armor for quickly gearing up your ults. Just in case you were curious, all of the Timewalking stuff on the PTR is 350 item level, so no huge change there. So when will this Timewalking event come around for the first time? Well, we're not too sure. Anything could happen to change the current calendar, like patch 8.1.5 being delayed, or Blizzard just deciding to change their mind, but for now, the PTR calendar has the first Warlords of Draenor Timewalking set for the week starting May 28th. It's worth noting that May 28th is marked for the Burning Crusade Timewalk event on the live calendar, so shifting every expansion 1 slot backwards for Timewalking and pushing in the WoD Timewalking makes a lot of sense. So right now, expect to see it on May 28th, but that's also subject to change for a variety of reasons. And just in case you don't have anything else to do in game right now, the next wing of the Battle of Dazar'alor looking for raid difficulty just opened up this week, so that's another 3 bosses you can whack away at for loot and to see how the raid and story progresses. The last Raid Finder wing won't open up until February 26th, which is another 2 weeks away, so this is all the LFR will get for a little while to come. When that final wing is released, we should see some extra story content, I would think, hopefully, and we might see patch 8.1.5 soon after, because then everything's done, the raid's done, and we can actually have access to the allied races now that we've gained their trust. The public test realms seem to have slowed down quite a bit recently too. There aren't that many updates being pushed onto the PTR, and what is new these days tends to be more fine-tuning rather than huge new systems being introduced. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we aren't all too far away from our next patch landing on live servers. But that's all for this video. What are you doing to pass the time in Warcraft these days? What do you think about the faction traitor mounts and the new allied race dances? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.